Hey guys, so I had put it out there that you could ask me questions like through the ether, and I do hear things sometimes, but tonight I got a very strong question coming through, and I guess I need to address it. And it is, do evil people know that they're evil? And that is a very complex question, and I honestly don't have all of the answers for it, but I'll explain what I know as best I can. So, sometimes there are human beings who are self-aware that they are not exactly human, and I think that they're rare, my understanding. And you're gonna find that in like the elite bloodlines, like, I mean, people like, for instance, Betsy, Queen Elizabeth. That bitch knows damn well what she is. Do her grandsons? I don't know. When I look at people like, there's certain individuals, Betsy is one, Obama is one, Pope Francis, and that fucking baby George, Prince William and Kate Middleton's kid. Holy fuck, that kid emanates evil in a way. Oof. But overall, like, just talking about your fellow man, no. My understanding is that most people don't know that. We are vessels for higher spirits in a very multidimensional way. You are many, many different beings. All of the mythologies are just existing in different dimensional realms, and those are just realms that we can understand, where gods would take on something close to human form. And then there's just dimensions of symbols, of thoughts, of intentions, and it gets very, very complex. But suffice to say that your subconscious, like I was saying in another video, makes up, let's say, about 85% of your consciousness, and that's made up of these different parts of you. So on one level of reality, we might be, let's say, engaged in a war. For instance, I don't know if I want to use that example, but okay. I find that I have some individuals, some that I've never met, for whom I have this instant dislike, almost like an irrational hatred. One such individual is the model Bella Hadid, who is the sister to Gigi, who is my human, I call her my doppelganger avatar. So she's the human being who appears in physical form as close to the form that I take on in other realms usually. Anyway, so this sister, I just want to punch her in the face. She's beautiful. Well, she's beautiful now that she's had some plastic surgery. But being beautiful does not make a good model, and everything about her just fucking irritates me. So I had to do some soul searching about why that might be. And Gigi's family structure mirrors my own. So her mother, she's a Psyche, and her mother is an Aphrodite. They have a different relationship dynamic than my mother and I do, but it mirrors ours. And it tells the Psyche and Aphrodite story in a different way. And Bella, like my sister and I, are God and Lucifer, so are Gigi and Bella. So the part of me that is at war with Lucy is resentful towards other living reflections of Lucy sometimes, not all of them, because Lucy and I aren't at war in all of the realms, but I hope that makes sense. Um, so right, back to whether or not people know. I'll just kind of speak from my own experience. I, like I've told you, was a non-believer, at times a bitter atheist, until my awakening at, 3 years ago when I was 37. And if I've had several situations where people I was friends with were believers and were trying to get me on what I would call God Squad in a very like demeaning manner, not to them, but to myself. Now I like own the God Squad thing. I love it. But it made me uncomfortable when people talked about God. It like something in me just felt almost sick, like I just wanted them to stop talking. And I can now recognize that's because I had all of these inner demons that I had not faced. And those demons won't allow you to hear truth. It's a frequency. And demons are fourth dimensional negative thought forms. Like they exist, they can take on physical form, and they do in the shape of the beings that we're told are aliens. But they also just like exist as thoughts, they exist as energy. And yeah, so that energy changes the frequency of yours such that you cannot understand certain truths. You can't see things for what they really are until you've faced those inner demons. And then it's like, I think biblically they call it removing the scales from your eyes. And when I was in that place, I was full of unconscious lies. So even early in my awakening, like in earlier Facebook posts, I spread some misinformation, but I did it with a good heart. I wasn't doing it intentionally. So there's always, if you go into like the whole truth community on YouTube, there's always this infighting and people calling each other shills and paid operatives. And it's not to say that those things don't exist. I mean, there are definitely people on the payroll who are there with the intention of obfuscating the truth and muddying the waters and finding the truth more complicated. So yeah, if they're on the payroll, if they work for, let's say, the CIA, yeah, they know what they're doing. And I imagine those people justify their actions in the way that anybody justifies doing things that they know aren't right to serve the ego. So I think that the majority of people who are spreading misinformation aren't doing it with the conscious intent of deception. I do tend to be naive in these matters, so maybe take that with a big grain of salt, but I do often see people's intentions, and intentions ultimately are what matter most to God. Sometimes like you have the best of intentions, but you screw things up. Like you really wanted to do the right thing, but somehow, I don't know, you couldn't get out of your own way. There are reasons for that. You were meant to learn from the mistakes that you made. It doesn't make you a bad person. But then there's people obviously who go about doing what they do with malicious intent. And that's a whole different kind of thing, and just suggests that the balance of energy in their spirit leans towards darkness. And I guess I won't get into the whole like what is darkness versus light and how both are completely necessary for this game of duality to work. Try to stay on track with the original question. Yeah, I still might be a little Pollyanna-ish, even after all I've been through, but I really don't think most people most people have the intent to hurt and deceive people. They do it unconsciously. The things, the lies that they tell are because they really believe them. Okay, flat earth, for example. I was hardcore into the whole flat earth thing for about a year, maybe a little over a year. Like, I really thought that that was going to be the movement that got things changed in this world. And it took me some time and more research and more searching for answers to learn that it's not that simple. That flat versus globe is part of the binary construct that we're meant to transcend. I mean, you only have to do a small amount of research into flat earth to see that, okay, like, we ain't living on a globe. Like, that's a whole bunch of lies. But the flat earth movement is a psychological operation in the sense that there are those, like, at the very top of, let's call them, like, deep black ops government projects, that understand what this reality is, that this is all a game of consciousness, and you can harness that consciousness towards certain ends. And the flat earth thing comes down to flat lines being indicative of male energy, and that's indicative of left brain consciousness. And that's the whole Martians thing, right? Going back to the Martians and the Atlanteans, very important, I think, to understand that, to see that that's just the war, if you will, that we're going through right now. I mean, it's more complicated than just that, but that's a very good starting point to understand we're just in another cycle of exactly what went down then. Just, well, spiritually exactly what went down then, just kind of manifested in, a different way for our modern times. So the Martians, being these predominantly left brain male energy creatures, want to keep things that way. And that's what belief in flat earth would lead to if it became mainstream. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how that all played out, because people would really have to accept a whole lot of other information. I mean, it would be chaotic, but ultimately, and it would lead to higher truths. I mean, in order to get to the point where you understand that Earth has many shapes based on this being like a quantum field of reality, and it's all based on observer consciousness, that there isn't just one shape to Earth. Like, that's some serious outside the box thinking that I don't see the masses ever being able to grasp. I mean, sounds nice, but most people think in 2D right now, never mind trying to go to 4D or 5D. Oof. Anyway, so the people who are hardcore pushing flat earth, some of them are the loveliest souls, beautiful souls whose intentions are good. And that movement is a necessary part of the awakening. It's just not the end game, and it is kind of a wrong turn in the labyrinth, but that doesn't make them evil, and it doesn't make them shills. So I hope those give you some answers about that question. If you have further questions about it, please let me know. Like, make comments or hit me up on Facebook. Or try the whole ether thing. I'll do my best to answer your questions. I don't know everything, but I can share what I know. Oh, by the way, as far as this whole flat earth thing, the way I can be so super confident that it's neither one nor the other is because I was begging Beauty, Beauty being the being most people think of as Jesus, and who I also think of as Cupid, like, what the fuck? What's the shape of the earth? Just tell me already. And I said, it has to be one or the other. And he goes, does it? And it was like, boom. I said, but there has to be some kind of objective reality. He said, does there? And that was like a major game changer for me and how I thought about things. That there doesn't have to be, in some cases, in many cases, an objective reality. That's a lot to get your mind around, but anyway, I love you guys a whole lot, and I'll talk to you soon.